On the morning of my wedding, I stood in front of the mirror in a $3,000 dress, trembling as I called my mother for the 10th time. When she finally answered, I asked where she was. The ceremony started in 2 hours. Her response wasn't an apology. It was a cold, careless laugh. "Oh, sweetie, we chose the resort trip instead. We're in Cabo." My own mother, along with my sister, had ditched my wedding using the non-refundable venue deposit money I'd trusted them to manage. They thought I'd collapse in tears and cancel the wedding. They thought I was the weak, quiet daughter who would swallow the humiliation. They were wrong. What they didn't know was that I owned the deed to the beach house they were staying in, and by sunset, their dream vacation was about to turn into a complete nightmare. Welcome to BT Revenge Tales. If you love stories of calculated justice, betrayal, and standing up to toxic family members, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. My name is Chloe. I'm 28 years old, and on the morning of my wedding, I stood staring at my reflection in a $3,000 silk gown. My hands were shaking so violently, I could barely hold my phone. The ceremony was set to begin in less than 2 hours, but the front row reserved for my family was completely empty. When my mother, Evelyn, finally answered my 11th call, I could hear soft ocean waves crashing in the background. Panicked, I asked where she and my younger sister were. Her response wasn't an apology. It was a cold, amused laugh that cut straight through me. "Oh, sweetie, don't be so dramatic," she said effortlessly. Asterisk, we chose the resort trip instead. We're in Cabo. Asterisk. I froze. They hadn't just abandoned me on the biggest day of my life. My mother had stolen the $10,000 venue deposit I'd trusted her to drop off weeks ago. She'd used my hard-earned money to book first-class tickets and a luxury villa for herself and Maya. They thought I'd break down, cancel the wedding, and beg for their approval like I always did. They thought I was weak. But they forgot one crucial detail. I knew exactly where they were staying. To be completely honest, I shouldn't have been surprised. This had been the pattern of my entire life. Growing up, my younger sister Maya was always the golden child who could do no wrong, while I was expected to be the reliable, silent provider. After earning my finance degree, I built a successful career as a senior financial analyst. But to my mother, my hard work was just an open checkbook. For years, Evelyn guilt-tripped me into paying off Maya's maxed-out credit cards, covering her car insurance, and subsidizing their lavish lifestyles under the guise of family helping family. When Mark proposed, I finally drew a hard line in the sand. I explicitly told my mother that I would no longer fund Maya's reckless spending, especially while saving for my own wedding. Evelyn smiled to my face and nodded, but behind my back, she took it as a personal insult. Stealing my wedding venue deposit wasn't just about a free beach trip. It was her calculated punishment to show me who was really in control. I hung up the phone, took a deep breath, and looked at my reflection in the mirror. I wiped away a single stray tear before it could ruin my makeup. If my mother thought her cruel trick was going to stop my wedding, she was dead wrong. I walked out of that suite with my head held high. My grandfather, the only person in my family who had ever truly loved and supported me, gently took my arm. He smiled warmly, telling me how proud he was, and walked me down the aisle. Standing at the altar next to Mark, looking into the eyes of a man who actually respected me, every ounce of sadness vanished. During the reception, as soft music played and our friends toasted to our future, I overheard a few guests whispering about my mother's empty table. I just smiled and took a sip of champagne. They thought I was sitting there in silent humiliation. What none of them realized was that while my mother was boasting about her luxury villa in Cabo, I had just remembered something very important about that exact property. You see, 3 years ago, my grandfather had placed a portfolio of international vacation rentals into a private real estate trust, naming me as the sole trustee and beneficiary. I knew that boutique beachfront resort in Cabo inside and out because my trust literally owned the management contract and the top-floor villas. When I discreetly pulled up the resort's guest portal on my phone between toasts, the whole scheme came into focus. Evelyn hadn't just stolen my $10,000 venue deposit. She'd used stolen credit credentials to secure the luxury suite reservation, listing my secondary joint emergency card as the primary billing backup for all incidental charges and the remaining $8,000 balance upon checkout. She fully intended to make me pay for her stolen paradise while she laughed at my empty venue. A cold, calm wave of realization washed over me. Right there at my head table, sitting in my wedding dress, I logged into my banking app and instantly revoked authorization on that card, freezing it dead. Then, I dialed the direct private line of the resort's chief general manager. Down in Cabo, Evelyn and Maya were lounging by the infinity pool, sipping top-shelf margaritas and laughing about how they'd put me in my place. They genuinely believed I was sitting alone at an empty hall, sobbing into my wedding dress. Their cozy little fantasy didn't last long. Just as my mother was ordering another round of expensive appetizers, two stone-faced resort security guards accompanied by the front desk manager approached their cabana. The manager politely informed Evelyn that her primary reservation card had been flagged for unauthorized use, and the backup card she provided had just been hard declined by the bank. Evelyn tried her usual arrogant routine, waving her hand and demanding they fix the system error. But the manager didn't budge. He informed her that unless she could produce an immediate, valid payment of $6,500 for the room balance and pending charges, they were in violation of resort policy. Panic instantly replaced her smug smile. Frantic and desperate, Evelyn grabbed her phone and dialed my number, completely unaware that her call was about to be heard by my entire wedding party. I put the call on speakerphone, setting it right on the head table next to our wedding cake. Asterisk Chloe. Asterisk Evelyn shrieked, her voice echoing through the quiet reception hall. Asterisk, there's a mistake with the card. You need to transfer $6,000 right now, or these people are going to kick us out. Do you hear me? Do it now. Asterisk. Mark held my hand, and the room was dead silent. I let out a slow, calm breath. Asterisk, you chose the resort over my wedding, Mom. Now choose how you're going to pay for it. Asterisk. Before she could scream, I handed the call over to the general manager, who was listening on the property line. I identified myself as the owner of the property trust and authorized immediate eviction for unpaid balances and fraudulent booking. The background audio filled with shrieks as security informed Evelyn and Maya they had 15 minutes to pack. Guests at the resort watched as my mother and sister were marched through the lobby, dragged out to the curb in front of everyone with their designer bags, stranded in a foreign country without a single dime to their names. Evelyn and Maya spent the next 2 miserable days stranded in a dingy, low-budget motel near the airport before maxing out their last remaining personal savings just to buy cheap, coach class tickets back home. The moment Mark and I returned from our wedding weekend, I met with my attorney and filed formal legal charges to recover the $10,000 my mother had stolen. I also filed for a complete financial separation, revoking her access to any accounts tied to my name. When Evelyn tried showing up at my front door sobbing and begging for forgiveness, claiming family should always forgive, I didn't even open the door. I simply handed her a copy of the legal notice. I was done being the family doormat. Cutting off my toxic mother and sister was the most terrifying thing I'd ever done, but it was also the most liberating. Mark and I left for our real honeymoon in Amalfi shortly after, starting our new life together with peace, clarity, and zero regret. That's the end of today's story. What would you have done if you were in Chloe's shoes? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more powerful revenge tales. See you in the next story.